Good morning, everyone, and you're all very welcome to the third day of our full week for the regional event series. My name is Suzanne Purcell, and I am General Manager of CitA. So before we get started, I'd just like to thank our two main sponsors for this event series, ARP and Diatech. Great to have them on board, and we have some of them presenting throughout the week, which is even better. So here is just to give you a quick snapshot. There's 5 days. If you are only logging in for today's, you are more than welcome to attend tomorrow's and Friday's. Every event is free. So if you want to send an email through to admin@cita.ie, or if you're on the MailChimp, just log in and register for whichever event that you would like to attend. So anyone, I'm just going to do a quick, I know some people have been on the previous 2 days, and they're on again today, but there are some new people on. So for those of you who are not familiar with CitA, CitA is a not-for-profit organisation which is running just 20 years. We offer both training and events for the construction sector. We have a CitA Skillnet training network which is running for 12 years now, and we can provide you with 30% discount off any training that you are doing within the construction sector. If you would like to become a member, this would enable you to promote your organisation. You'll get your own exclusive membership page on the website, and you will be able to attend free to the Circular Economy series, the Tech Trend series, and the Regional Event series. And you will also get a membership rate to attend the CitA BIM gathering. So the Circular Economy series is 10 events. We have already done 2 events, and the next event is taking place on the 6th of May. This series is run in conjunction with CIOB, GMIT, and IGBC. The Technology Tech Trend series, this is basically looking at the top 10 technologies that will transform the construction sector. We have some great sponsors on board there again, and these are the 10 topics which are being looked at. The event for the 22nd of April has just been moved to the 29th of April, but that is looking at the Internet of Things and sensor technologies. The CitA Skillnet network, as I mentioned already, that looks at construction-specific training for the construction sector. It is a large enough network. There's about 400 or so trainees that go through it. We are at 208 member companies at the moment, and the training days. So any training that you are interested in doing, you can log on to the CitA website, go into the CitA Skillnet training section, look at the schedule, or drop an email through to admin@cita.ie for any training needs, and we will come back to you. The gathering, which is taking place in September, is our 5th time to be running this conference. These are the 10 different themes that we are looking at for 2021. And we already have received 42 abstract papers, which is the highest we've received out of the 5 years that we have done this. There will be on top of that 6 keynote speakers. There will be 6 highlight or industry speakers as well. So if you aren't connected to CitA or you want to find out any more information, please go onto the CitA website, click into the CitA events, the past events, the CitA training, the CitA membership, and the sponsorship. Or if you would like to follow us and find out information on a daily basis, follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. Any questions, contact the CitA team. And if you subscribe to CITA's YouTube channel, events like today, they are all recorded, and those events recordings are uploaded onto the YouTube channel. And there you'll be able, there's 10 years of information up there of recordings. So there is great event information there for anyone who is interested or doing some research. So I'm going to hand over to Finola now, who's going to take you through and share the event for us. So I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Suzanne, and welcome everybody. This is my 2nd time to be invited back and to represent AIT and the Midlands for the CitA Regional Week. We had a great response to the event that we hosted last November, I believe it was. So today I was asked to just give a brief rundown of where we are in AIT in our journey and that. So there's a list of our speakers who I'll happily introduce in about another 10 minutes or so. So for those who didn't see our talk on last November, you might not be aware that AIT we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. COVID has put a quick stop to any anniversary celebrations we might have had planned, but we can always delay them. An exciting few years ahead of us. And again, I suppose we're not looking at the past, we're very much forward thinking here in AIT. And with that, we have planning permission gone in for a new STEM building, new research buildings, and an overall master plan for the AIT campus, and soon to be, hopefully, Technical University. So again, it was media announced, we have the application in. We might know in June if we have been successful or not. And all things going well, September 2021 is when we might turn the key on our new technical university in partnership with LIT. And I'm delighted to have Liz O'Brien from LIT here on our talk and in the whole ethos of collaboration and going forward. I think it's a perfect opportunity for that. As well as that, some of you might not know what expertise we have here in AIT and what outreach we have. Sometimes people think that we're very much just a regional institute of technology. We're going to be hitting with the big boys, we hope, when we become a technical university. But even before all of that has happened, we're actually part of a consortium of a European university network. And what that means for our students and our industry partners and that is that we can collaborate with other European universities. Our students can do exchange and research with other European universities, and we can collaborate. And I think that's a very big word going forward for all third level education students and partners, is collaboration. So I just thought it'd be interesting for you to see a map of where we are connected European wise in our potential technical university status. So this is where we're at now. And again, our researchers in AIT and our lecturers are consistently collaborating to ensure that our regional needs are met, our student needs are met, and that we're kept abreast of technological changes in the institute, and that we're forward thinking. We have to be forward thinking by 3 to 4, 5 years. Which brings me on to DASB. I introduced it, and I think it was the first time it was announced last November, or it's the Digital Academy for the Sustainable Built Environment. To date, we have partnered with LIT, GMIT, Tipperary Energy Agency, and the Irish Green Building Council. Here in AIT, the project coordinators are myself and a Dr. Attractive Foley in the Department of Engineering and Informatics. At the moment, it's a 5-year funded hub, if you like, for upskilling, capacity building and education in the building sector. And our 3 main themes are green construction, the circular economy and digital skills. A theme that I've hoped to bring to you all today with the speakers that we have lined up to potentially give you a taste of what's to come for this digital hub that we're aiming for. It's only the start. The website won't be up until September. We're actively scouring Europe, the nation, for ideas, needs, skills from everybody from construction workers and industry. At the moment, we have 40 programs, and we're hoping to have over 2,000 learners, subsidized funding going through our hub. But we're on the lookout for additional IoTs and industry partners going forward. And interestingly, our range of courses will be CPD all the way up to levels 6 and 9. So hopefully catering for everybody. As employers say to me, we want the sheep dip effect. We want our employees to be able to tap in to courses and jump back out again and get back to work. So we're hopefully, like CitA, catering for everybody. These are our target audiences at the moment. So if you see yourself there, if you know somebody who might be interested, please reach out to us. But more importantly, we have to be responsive to industry. So if you're a manufacturer, a supplier, an industry person, and you work in the area of sustainability, the circular economy, digital skills, please reach out to us. And Liz will have more about this in her presentation as well. As you can see there, there's the broad range of aspects that DASB will be focusing on as well. And again, we'll have Joe speaking on aspects of retrofitting, and we'll have Alice speaking on aspects of quality management, which runs throughout all of these and is an essential component in the future of construction as well. So again, I have it down twice: industry engagement is key. So here's a list of some of the programs that are currently in development, will be offered through the DASB. And I said each institute will have their own other programs, up to 40 at the moment, from level 6 to level 9. So we were asking that come September, keep an eye out on the media, social media channels. If there's something here that piques your interest, if there's something that's not there that you think we should know, please get in touch. And that brings me on very nicely to my first speaker, Elisabeth O'Brien from LIT, Senior Project Officer in the Renewable Energy Sustainability Research in Limerick. And now, as I just recently promoted, the manager of DASB as well. So Liz, I'm just going to stop sharing. And if you're ready there, I'd be delighted to let you take it away.
Lovely, thanks Finola. First of all, I will share my screen. Hopefully you can see this. The Wi-Fi here seems to go very, very slow.
Yeah, that's fine, we can see that.
Great, perfect. Okay, so again, thanks Finola and to CitA for letting me speak today. And hi to everyone and welcome aboard. I see you're still all coming in, but hopefully you will catch some of my slides, the newcomers. So as Finola said, the presentation today is on microlearnings to support the digital journey for SMEs. And when I say SMEs, small, medium enterprises, and it touches all construction industry, from professionals down to construction workers and managers. So just be aware, with the transition of the jobs in the Midlands at the moment, there's rapid changes to the construction industry with new regulations, energy efficiency, circular economy, digitalisation, as well as the after effects of COVID. There's going to be huge change in Ireland. But we're very adaptable as a country, so there should be bright years ahead, and there's going to be huge opportunities, not just, as Finola said, in the education and training, but also for manufacturers to develop the innovative materials and get them certified. And let's have Ireland there with lots of new products. So first of all, let me introduce myself. As Finola said, my name's Liz O'Brien. I work at LIT, Limerick Institute of Technology, and we're based in Thurles at the development unit. So I'm an architect and sustainable energy engineer, and I develop many training programs for the entire construction industry at all levels, be it related to NZEB, circular economy, renewables, or digitalisation. And many of these learning units and trainings that we develop include digital tools such as BIM, VR, and in the next stages we're going to hopefully start developing AR trainings, and I suppose a lot of that will come through when we start on the DASB project. So a little about LIT. We have 5 campuses across Limerick, Clare and Tipperary, so we're already quite spread out. And we're growing in numbers. At the moment, we have over 6,700 students currently attending different courses. And these courses are in the minor awards, the major awards, but also flexible learning, which has been a strong push in LIT in flexible learnings. As Finola says, LIT and Athlone are joining forces and becoming a technological university. And it's useful to see this map, how far we're stretching with this technological university. It basically takes the whole of the Midwest, and this will happen in September. So you're probably aware other IoTs of amalgamators such as TU Dublin, Cork and Tralee with the TU Munster, WRT and Carlow, and also Letterkenny, Sligo and GMIT will be coming strong universities also. So a little about the development unit. It's part of our research, development and innovation, and it connects the learning and upskilling aspects with industry, mainly working on EU-funded projects with experts across Europe, but also here in Ireland with industry partners which you're very familiar with IGBC, but also Tipperary Energy Agency. and other construction bodies such as CIF, etc., etc. So we'll also work closely with other educational bodies such as ETBs, which are the educational training boards, who deal with mainly apprenticeships, but also vocational training, and other higher institutes, which I've already mentioned, TU Dublin, GMIT, to name but a few. So the development unit has grown hugely over the last 5 years. I've been at LIT development unit for about 7 years now. And since we started with QualiBuild, which was one of the first EU energy efficient projects, it's actually increased dramatically. We're now involved with over 27 projects. So the main focus is sustainability in all fields, but not just energy and climate change, but also sustainability for rural life, because we are very much a rural university, and we work with social enterprises and tourism, and there's many other small divisions from that. We're also working on the peat farms and finding alternatives, alternative employment, but also finding ways of using the disbanded, whether it's the right word or not, peat bogs, and how to use them to improve and help the carbon footprint in Ireland. We also use outdoor learning through a project called FOLM, which is FOLM. And this is aimed to get young people and those left behind in society, excuse me, especially in rural Ireland. And we need to get them back on their feet and into employment. And this is urgent now, considering all the COVID issues. There's going to be huge amounts of young people unemployed when we all start moving back into work. This is our team. There's a few more additions on there, which obviously weren't in the photo at the time or just didn't like to be photographed, not quite sure. As I said, we are actually based in Tipperary. It used to be Tipperary Institute. So ourselves and Clonmel joined up with LIT and we all became one. So we've already amalgamated and we'll be doing it again with Athlone. So what do we do at development unit? Everyone's talking about skills needs, matching the skills to jobs in Europe. And this is one of the platforms in Europe, helping people to find skills and looking at different new skills that are emerging and how we can bring people back into the workforce. So Build Up Skills Portal is not just driven by energy efficiency in buildings, but also by green and digital economies. And it's the Build Up Skills that really started this whole movement in Europe for the construction industry. And back home, we have many other people carrying out research, etc. But one of the main groups is the Expert Group on Future Skills Needs, the EGFSN. And they review the demand for skills, not just now, but also in the future. And they're a really important document here, which is done last year. There's another one due in September 2021 to look at more of the circular economy and the approaches with circular economy. So what's happening now and what's needed in the future? The industry in Ireland is changing. The skills are needed to fill the gaps, whilst new skills are needed to move Ireland into the 21st century. And what's important is that we need to stay competitive. And this is the scale of the challenge. All public buildings, these are all the new things that have come through, let alone the existing things that are there at the moment. All public buildings are to be NZ by 2030. This will require 140,000 full-time workers. Residential retrofit of 500,000 homes to BER2. Now, there is a proposal to increase this to B1 energy ratings, but this needs 400,000 workers. And don't forget the 20,000 new homes that will be built annually to NZEB standard, obviously. And these are currently covered by the existing jobs. So you can see there are huge potential for jobs and employment in this sector, but how we deal with it is the key. So there are multi-layered problems. Designing these buildings, getting the craft and construction workers to carry out the build. How do we manage to achieve this efficiently and effectively? Digitalization is one of the ways forward in this. Bear in mind when you're building or if you're designing, you have to consider all the energy efficient changes and requirements and regulations, as well as the circular economy requirements, waste management, life cycle analysis, etc., etc. We need technical expertise. We need effective supervision and management. We need to monitor the works. We need to make sure everything's compliant, comparing the building gap, the building performance gap, energy performance gaps from what's designed and what's being built. We need finance. How can people get finance? You know, not just for the construction workers, but also for the building owners and the homeowners. And of course, the customer journey. Never ever forget the customer journey, because the end product is for the client and for the occupants in particular. So many of these workers need to be upskilled or newly trained. The customers also need to be made aware of what's going on, because a lot of people don't understand what's actually going on in the industry. So the workforce that are needed are to have new, updated skills. Just to go back a little bit of the history, which I'm sure you're familiar with. The property bubble crashed in 2008. The employment in the construction industry at that time was 240,000. It fell in 2012 to 81,000. Now, I haven't taken the figures from 2020 because of COVID, so I kept the most relevant figures, which would be from 2019. The Irish overall growth was 23%. That's for all industries. For the construction industry, the growth was 80% from 2008. Understandably, because everybody lost their jobs and now things were getting rebuilt. Bear in mind, during the boom, 25% of the housing was built in that period. So the figure represents employment in the construction sector, which is 70% of the built environment sector. And as previously mentioned in the expert group in future skills needs, it looks at quantifying the skills needs, closing the skills gap, preparing for the future with training for niche and emerging skills. There's things on the bottom right hand corner you see from NSI for the SR54 and the SR50, which is the new one coming out for the heat pump. I'll talk about those in one of our projects, HP for All. So these are the key drivers. I'm possibly going to be going over time, so I'm going to have to speed up here. For Europe, and I try to put it in the context for Ireland, significant drivers for the energy efficiency with the Climate Action Plan. NZ is mandatory, upskilling, major renovations of homes, as well as installing heat pumps. Digitalisation. For Ireland, we looked at the BIM roadmap using ISO 19650 and the tools for optimising these installations. And the use of BIM, AR and VR are the main drivers. And circular economy, the green criterion, all public sector tenders, so especially in green procurement, tendering, that needs to be addressed, needs action used in the digital sector to move this forward. So this is just a snapshot of all the different balloons which you can see. So these are the projects. These are just a few of the projects of the 27 that we do. These are all mainly around energy efficiency. So I'm going to be quick with these because I'll be talking about the important ones later on. So we start off with Quali Build. I've mentioned this already, which is the Build Up Skills project. Then we started working on A2P Beer, where we carried out train the trainer and trainings in 9 countries. And this was retrofitting public buildings and districts. And it's really interesting to see how differently you have to deal with districts compared to individual buildings. And then in Train the Trainer, we prepared business plans for developing NZEB training centres, especially in Eastern Europe. But the terms of reference we use has been adopted now in Ireland, developing the ETBs, Educational Training Boards at the moment. Huge backing from Solace to make sure that it's not just Waterford, Wexford Educational Training Board that's getting the funding, all the other ETBs are as well. So the access for construction skills will be national. Now, HP for all and heat pump for all, I'll talk about that later as well, but that is mainly looking at the heat pump design and installations. And then we have Superhomes 2030, looked at deep retrofitting of houses. So the short trainings and micro learnings developed in BIMSEED, Construction Blueprint, BONRAS, BuzzLeague and DASB will be presented a little later. And I'm going to apologise now for all these acronyms. There's so many acronyms we use in European projects. So how do we upskill each of these targets? First of all, we set out specifications, NZEB specifications for Ireland. This the launch here. HP for All project. We talked about the retrofitting, we talked about heat pumps, and what they intend to do here is create greater awareness of the benefits of heat pumps among building owners, develop the entire heat pump value chain, increase the number of designers, installers, and also set up some trainings. And they hope to work with existing people who are providers who are doing trainings and get this organized rather than in a fragmented manner. This is BONRAS. This project is with IGBC and it introduces the building passports in Ireland. Also develops new roles for energy retrofit advisors and energy retrofit installers. And certain trainings have been completed and these are available on the One Stop Buzz app. And I'll talk about that later. That's in the BuzzLeague project. Following on from this is skills in green procurement. LIT are developing an innovative training program for green procurement with the target group aimed at everybody who deals with the tender procurement, be it public authorities, professionals, or anyone else in the industry. So the training will be in short learning units and it's allowing you to choose which topic you wish to complete. You can do them all as a 40-hour course, but you can also choose what you think you need upskilling on. And this is using a similar format as BIMSEED, which allows you to complete the online or blended training in your own time. And that is so important in the day's climate. And it's hoped to run an in-house training. So if any large companies are interested, we're happy to assist. This training plan won't be ready till October. It's LIT's responsibility to get this. So any help from the industry to help us develop this and work with other people on this, we'd be very happy to accommodate it. Just to note, there's also another green procurement project, Life Level project, which is IGBC are running, and we're working with them. We're working on both these together. So we're in the process of getting information for a survey, which has been sent out already in the media. We're gathering information about existing training, skills, gaps and needs, and we hope to carry out interviews to get your inputs in more detail. So if you're interested and you're happy to help, please contact me at the email address here. Hopefully I can interview you and find out how the situation is for you in your company for as far as green procurement is concerned. So how does digitalization fit into all this? With BIM skills are important for NZEB, and with aspects of NZEB can be improved with BIM. We need to merge, we need to join them together. And it's not just NZEB, it's circular economy, aspects on waste management and life cycle. All these need to be combined and moved within courses. But this is what we did in BIMSEED. It's an open-ended resource and it's a combination of blended, in-class, online or on-site learnings, flexible learning units, short and micro, and they can be used as standalone units. So you can just carry out one of the learning units, or you can group them together and you can maybe do 4 together, and that is like a course in itself. Or you can integrate them into existing vocational as well as higher education programs. And we're piloting these at the moment. So obviously we need to test it, make sure they work, make sure the materials are acceptable. Once this is completed, which is the beginning of next year, all the materials will be free to use by everyone. And that's what's great about EU funded projects. You can avail of all the material. It's already funded by EU. We can't keep it, you can't keep it, it's free to everyone. So as I said, the combination of the learning units can be changed to follow the changing market needs in each country. And when there's short bite-sized units, it's easy to change them and update them rather than doing a whole program, which all has to get changed. And with these, it strengthens links between education, R&D, industry, and SMEs. So we have developed 12 learning units, all at different levels. And we use EQF is a European qualification framework. For our own national frameworks, we talk about levels 5 to 8, no, wrong way around, 3 to 6. So we're short units with 8 to 10 hours contact and 24 to 36 hours self-study. And as I say, they can be delivered in any format that the training provider would like. So after extensive research and surveys, a number of skills needs were presented, and we've chosen 12 of these topics as priority. Of course, there are other skills gaps at knowledge, and maybe we can develop them later in the future, maybe through DASB. So of the 12, 10 are available now, and the last 2 are available in April. So as you can see from the range, we do fundamentals, advanced use of BIM to achieve NZ construction, specialised needs in facilities management, energy simulation and modelling, all at different levels. So we're looking for trainers to run these learning units. Take a look at the website, bimz.eu, in the e-learning section and find out more about BIMZ courses and for the trainers. If you go on the trainers and complete it, you have access to all the material. This is another project, Buzz League, and it focuses, what's most important about this project is it's a one-stop shop to find your trainings in Ireland. And this is on the Build Up Skills app. So you see this, it's on the next page. You'll find short trainings for hardware and DIY organisations that can support and advise contractors. So that's really important, is to get the hardware companies and the building merchants involved, because their staff needs to be trained as well. They need to know what they're selling. So we're working with IGBC on this, and we're doing a number of campaigns. The first campaign is on the 22nd of April, supporting the retrofit journey with innovative technologies. And this is the link here, so anyone can link to this and join. And we'll be carrying out breakout rooms. It's also for HP for all and also for Super Homes, so it's not just for Buzz League. We're also hoping to get a training clause organised in Ireland to be part of legislation for the green procurement as well, making sure that skills are acknowledged when we make considerations in the procurement process. So this is a Build Up Skills app. You see the link there on Google Play, and you can download it and you can have a see what's on there. This is only starting to be developed. There are training programs at the moment, and we're going to add them on over the next year. And it's a one-stop shop for you to find out where the trainings are, where they're available. But we link them to all the institutes and all the vocational schools and any private organisations. We can link to there. So it's, as I say, it's one place to go to get all this information. The next project is the construction blueprint. This is a really important project for us to be involved in. Not just us, but for Ireland. And it's the strategy is to set out a strategy for the construction skills in Europe with 12 countries, but it's setting out a blueprint for the next 10 years. So whatever the outcomes of this is what Europe will be taking on board and directing us with the construction industry, on helping us with the construction industry. So it's a really, really important project. We're going to link this with DASB. So hopefully they'll work together. Now, one important part of this, there's lots of things here which I won't go through because of the time. The most important part of this is this e-learning platform, and it's split into 3 sections. We have VET curricula, which we'll be developing at levels 4, 5 and 6 on energy efficiency, circular economy, digitalisation, but also health and safety. And it's looking at the green aspects of health and safety as opposed to just health and safety. And you complete a full course or chosen modules, and the training material will be available for training providers to use in their trainings. So we are looking for vet providers to run this. I know that WWETB are interested, but if anyone else is interested, we'd be very happy to get them involved. As far as micro learnings, this is the big part. This is the thing that is the game changer for industry. And these are, we will put all the different types of micro learnings onto this e-learning platform. You register, you can complete any of these modules or courses, and we can join them together. We're also going to try and set up a trading plan. So we recommend training plans for you as well, so you can see which ones are interconnected and which can be grouped together. That's done at your own time. It's all free. All the resources are free. There's also the opportunity for other trainings to be linked to this e-learning platform. So someone can find a course and go, oh, I like to do that course, and you are directed to the host platform. So say TU Dublin are doing a course, it will go directly to their website. It won't be part of this platform. Now, when it comes to EU projects, they only run for a certain length of time. So the resources could come into this e-learn platform when they're ready to. DASB is the last one, which Finola's already talked about. And again, I don't need to go into this detail because she already has. The most important part of this is the connection between the construction blueprint and DASB. The construction blueprint is really the connection between industry and the vocational levels and with the higher educations. And it's allowing people to progress through the whole system using bite-sized micro learnings. So say a school leaver or even someone in industry could see and maybe do a short micro learning and decide, oh, I don't like that, or I like that, and then progress into a minor or a major award, rather than going straight into a bachelor's degree and not liking it and giving it up after a year. And that's one of the big problems, is the fallout rate from a lot of these institutions. So quick conclusion. As you know, the challenge is immense to reskill and upskill. We already have an overstretched construction sector, which means employers have a challenge in recruiting, retaining, releasing staff. And it's important to make sure training and upskilling the workforce does not affect the work being carried out by the workforce. There are many innovative tools to help with this upskilling, like digital online training, micro-credentials and badges, CPDs as an example, alternative delivery modes as well. As I say, they can be online. We could even go in-house or on-site. So it's quite flexible and varied. We also need your support in upskilling educators and trainers. That's one of the progress we're doing in BIMSEED and also in a couple of other projects. And we need to invest both time and money. So leaving it at that point, thanks for your attention. I hope you haven't fallen asleep.
Thank you very much, Liz. Far from, I just turned off my camera there. Far from falling asleep, I think I'm sort of speechless. I was speechless at the point of where you mentioned the loss of jobs and the lack of skilled workers that we have. And I said COVID has exacerbated all of that.
Yeah.
I certainly was shocked by the amount of funding that's available from the EU. And again, unless you highlight it, we're not aware of what's out there, you know. And the centralized app, I feel as well, will be great. And the fact that it ties in, and again, that word collaboration, as we often mention, it ties in with everybody around Ireland. I don't know, there's nothing in the chat room, but again, if there's any questions right now before Joe sits in, we'll be free to take them or ask Liz. No, I said it's an exciting time for construction. For us educators, it's a tough time because not only is legislation training, the skills needs are training. So again, it's really good that we're included in your needs. And I loved the idea of the hardware people as well, the people selling the products having to be upskilled. I think that's something I wouldn't have even crossed upon before. So Joe, I think you're up next. And you're very welcome. I think this is the first time certainly you've spoken from CitA, Ecological Building Systems. So Joe, if you would like to do a quick introduction and you can start sharing your screen there, I'll let you go.
Thanks, Finola. Just share it to me. You might just tell me if it comes up yet.
Yep, it's there, Joe.
Oh, that's great. Okay, just press this play button. Yeah, so first I'd like to thank yourself, Finola, for considering us today. You know, I found your lectures very useful when I was in college, and I'm very grateful for the effort you had to put into us particularly. So I'm here to speak on behalf of Ecological Building Systems and myself, of course. And as a company, we supply natural building materials, and they often find their way into older buildings. So in this presentation, I hope to demonstrate some of the technical processes we use to support our recommendations to customers and to homeowners, project developers, so that we can be confident that the risk is as low as possible. Liz did mention there the scale of the task at hand, and Ireland does intend to decarbonise the entire built environment by 2050, which is of course to be applauded, but it's also a really big challenge, and there's a real possibility that some of these older buildings might fall by the wayside and quality might suffer, because out of the approximately 500,000 homes that have to be retrofitted, there's between 200,000 and 300,000 single leaf solid masonry construction type buildings. So they're quite vulnerable and they're quite sensitive to poor building methods. So just do a quick introduction of myself. I'm a former student of Finola's, and I spent a lot of time that I look back on very memorably with AIT and recently with TU Dublin. And my background really is in energy performance in buildings, low carbon construction, sustainable design, things like that. And I'm also an NSAI certified thermal modeler and hydrothermal risk assessor. As a company, we've been around since around the year 2000. We're born from a parent company that's been around since 1906. And since the year 2000, in that 2 decades, we've gained a lot of experience, and we've developed a big technical know-how between us with plenty of experience and material knowledge in these broad areas. But today's short presentation, I'll be looking at how, we help people to build a plan with the right material type that suits a building. That's an important point because all buildings are very, very different. So no silver bullet will match every building type. We'll have a look at the reason for the risk, which is moisture, particularly in Ireland, and its impact on traditional buildings. And then we'll take a look at how I use, or our company and other companies and designers use, hydrothermal risk assessment in accordance with EN 15026, which is the performance standard. It is actually the methodology that's recognized in BS 5250, which is the Code of Practice for Control of Moisture in Buildings. It's also recognized in a document that Liz mentioned, NSAI SR 54 2014, the Code of Practice for Energy Efficient Retrofitted Dwellings, and it's also mentioned in TGD Part L 2019 and by WTA, which is an International Association for Science and Technology. And then we'll take a look at how thermal bridge assessment is used in accordance with EN 10211. And it's also mentioned in TGD Part L for, calculating linear heat loss in buildings and temperature factors to try and audit our buildings against mold. So we'll take a look at how, generally speaking, a good plan will have to consider the U values, of course, but most people tend to put too much value on the U value. So a good building to them would be a building with good U values, when in fact much more comes into it. For example, where the heat loss might be going apart from out of the planar 2D elements. Air tightness is a big consideration because it doesn't matter how good your U values are. If a building is drafty, it's going to be cold. Of course, the more airtight it gets, the more important ventilation becomes, and indoor air quality is linked to that. Fabric safety, learning how to know what's going on behind things. So it's, there's a huge part of heat loss is how moisture moves through buildings and what might happen, where it might get up to no good as it does that. And of course, trying to select a suitable material for the job, because not every material is the same. So a lot of people will say it's an old building, put something breathable on it. Well, if we take a look at this next slide, you'll see 3 very similar material types that we sell. So we sell wood fiber on the left, calcium silicate in the middle, and a cork and lime-based thermoplaster on the right. Now, it is true to say that they're all breathable, and technically maybe they're suitable in all old buildings, but you may have a case where you need to deal with excessive amounts of potential moisture. Now, breathability refers to what a material can do with moisture in all its phases, so liquid, gas, ice, everything, and they all behave very, very differently from that respect. So I'll just play a short little clip and show you what I mean. This is a time-lapse video, and although they're all breathable, so moisture vapor will pass through them all, they all perform very differently with liquid water. So very often you might need something that would be referred to as capillary active, something that has the ability to store and transport moisture, to evaporate it when it's safe to do so when there's enough temperature and ventilation. So this is just a short sample to show you that even with building materials, there's a lot of technical characteristics that comes with them that we need to be looking at more closely. So really it's just about building a good plan, figuring out certain things about the building. I won't go into all these in great detail, but knowing things about the building will help paint the picture and tell us what that particular building is, so we can have a holistic view of it rather than thinking that they're all the same, when in fact buildings are like fingerprints, they're all different. A good example of that would be, over the next 3 slides, I'll show you 3 old buildings, single leaf buildings, but 3 very different strategies were used. For example, here in thermal refurbishment of Regency House in Dublin, they used calci-therm because walls were very level, there was below ground levels, which was, you know, a higher degree of moisture needed to be considered, so they needed something capillary active. It had original features that needed to be worked around, and it was a mid-terrace dwelling. In the next building, we see a big old vacant barn type building that really wanted to target low U values, that had an external plaster on it. So it meant you could build a dry line inside on a very airtight vapor control air. Or for example, Warmount Convent in Dublin, where they had an existing lime plaster on the walls ready to go, and they had very well conditioned external plaster and features. So thermal capabilities of wood fibre in this case was considered optimal. Or you might have a wall where it's exposed stone. Now there could be a huge cost to level that stone with a lime so that you could get one of the other systems onto it. So there are materials like our thermal plaster that you could just spray directly onto that exposed stone, and it's an insulation first and foremost. So it has very, very good insulating capabilities. It just happens to behave like a lime plaster. It's extremely capillary active and it's very breathable. Gives you the speed advantage of being able to do things, you know, at the right sequence after first fix electrical has been installed, covering huge area in a given day. So when those guys have the wall sprayed out to a given depth, you know, that will equate to a U value, and then it's screeded off, skimmed and painted with a natural breathable paint. So as you can see, there's different strategies for different buildings, and, you know, you may have to consider the condition of the building also. So a good example would be Dublin Civic Trust occupied this building, which is 18 Norman Quay, and it's a fantastic example of how to retrofit a building to a very high standard. But in this situation, at an early stage, there was unsuitable surfaces, cement pebble dash needed to be removed, water goods needed to be repaired, external pointing and, you know, drainage and detailing needed to be addressed before it could be brought back into this century. And they did insulate some of the upper floors in that building with that thermal plaster that I just showed, and calci-therm at the very upper level. So really what we're trying to get at is to avoid the issues caused by poorly considered retrofits. If you accept that figure from ASHRAE, 90% of building failure occurs because of moisture in some way. I would say that in Ireland that's probably higher, because in Ireland we have a very high degree of moisture at all times. And that moisture comes from everywhere. You know, this is taken from Joseph Little Architect's publication, and it just shows that we're constantly getting bombarded with rain, but moisture can come from the inside as well. So it can come from moisture vapor diffusing through a material or being carried by convection through cracks in the openings, where it gets into the colder structure and then begins to condense and cause all kinds of problems. Now, in the past, the way we used to build used to allow us to deal with that. So we used to build in this vernacular way, where we had good land drainage, we had great surfaces, lime plasters, we had well-maintained rainwater goods and, you know, breathable surfaces internally. And that a building like that would have a high evaporation profile. It would be able to dry to inside and outside. So yes, it would get wet because we're in Ireland, but it could also dry. So it was constantly in this cycle of dealing with that moisture. And that moisture is ever present. If we take a look at this map of Ireland, this is an adapted map that comes from BR262, adapted by Building Life Consultancy and Joseph Little. And really what it aimed to do was to show that in Ireland, we have some exposure zones that are worse than others. So for example, on the West Coast, we experience very high incidence of rain. Midlands is pretty bad throughout also. And then the further you get towards Dublin, you know, the less severe it becomes. But what's interesting about this map is that if you look at the BR262 UK version of it, they have a zone that's 1, most of the island is 2 and 3, whereas most of our Ireland is 3 and 4. So we're always dealing with this moisture. And when you apply poorly installed building materials, things that are unsuitable on older buildings, like for example, you replace the good drainage with paving outside, or you have concrete surfaces placed internally on the floors, or you apply cement renders to the walls. Now what happens when water gets into that wall is it begins to accumulate, and it begins to get worse and worse, and then you get boast plaster, cracking, interstitial condensation, rotting timbers, and the fabric safety gets worse and worse and worse. So the same thing is true for boards. So this board, being a phenolic type insulation pressed against a wall, has the ability to potentially trap warm, moist air behind it, creating the perfect conditions for mold to thrive and for very poor conditions, which is what happened in this situation behind an ill-conceived dry line with a plastic membrane that had gaps in it, that wasn't airtight, had cold surfaces and gypsum plaster, providing a good food source for mold and nutrients. Likewise, in this building that I was in 3 weeks ago, this is an old gate lodge where behind the kitchen units, there was voids created behind some really, really badly fitted insulation and an old gypsum skim plaster that shouldn't have been there in the first place. But it just goes to show you that warm air will find its way in. It'll always condense on the first cold surface it meets. And if you give it those conditions, it will thrive. So this is what we're trying to avoid. So one way of avoiding it is not to build dry lines off walls. Don't leave space behind insulation like it shows in this image, unless the space is completely ventilated to the outside, top and bottom. And you'd have to do that in multiple locations. And even at that, you're kind of hoping for the wind to be blowing in order for there to be an air transfer behind insulation. But if you don't have a ventilated space there, what can happen is, and what will happen is, warm air leaks in behind the dry line. The red arrow shows that at the top. And as it gets cooler, it begins to get denser. And as it gets denser and cools, it loses its ability to hold that moisture. So it releases it on the cold surfaces, which is where we saw a minute ago. Things like this occur behind in an unventilated space. So we need to avoid stagnant air gaps and pockets behind insulation. So of course, it's more than just wishful thinking and hoping we're doing the right thing. As a company, we use this methodology. We use WUFI numerical simulations, and we carry them out in accordance with EN 15026, which is the convention mentioned in, Part L and NSAI SR4 2014, etc. It's a computer-assisted simulation program, and it's a dynamic software that basically you can perform a transient model and input data about real-life climatic conditions, day and night temperatures, time of year. You can run this model over 10 years, 20 years, to see what happens, to draw a picture and to gauge what type of risk a certain strategy might have. So it's a very useful software, and of course it's done in accordance with EN 15026, which provides much higher accuracy than a standard dew point method, which would be carried out to EN 13788. Dew point can only tell you what's happening when vapor moves from the inside to the outside. So it's completely ignoring everything else, the storage capacity of the wall, potential defects in the fabric, temperature variations and fluctuations. It can't cope with that kind of thing. So this type of method is much more robust. And just to show it in a real life situation, this is the Sturdy Barn Enerfit project in the UK, where the U value targets for the walls were very onerous, 0.11, which is very low, past the standard U values for an internal wall insulation strategy. The look of the building was very important, so they couldn't insulate it outside. So the only option really was to build a big frame, insulate it internally, essentially creating an internal timber frame off the main structure. But the real question was, did that space between both need to be ventilated? Because it had an impact visually on the outside of the building, had an impact on cost, it had an impact on, even the daily arguments that would go on site, things like that. So the only way to really assess this at an early point was to take a look at it on a dynamic simulation using WUFI. And on the basis of no ventilation in the cavity, you can position probes virtually in the software, and you can monitor a certain position. And the main position of interest was the wood fiber at the back of the frame. And I'll just go back to it at the moment. On the back of that frame, you can see wood fibre is positioned. It's the secondary insulation layer before it meets the stone wall in the space. So positioning a probe on that virtually, on the basis of no ventilation in the cavity, we carried out this numerical simulation with WUFI, and we monitored the moisture content of the external wood fibre. And without ventilation, its moisture content increased to over 44% after only 7 years, which indicated a really high risk of failure. Because with wood-based products or wood, you're starting to get into that dangerous territory once you hit 18%, 20%, 22%. So again, this raised to over 44% in only 7 years. By simulating a ventilation in that space, on the basis of including ventilation in that cavity, we carried out the same simulation. And with it, we found that it remained at a really stable 10.5% average for 10 years of the calculation, which indicated a really high risk of safety. So the inclusion in this case of a ventilated cavity proved crucial for that specification. So again, you want to, a part of eliminating defects internally is ensuring that you don't get cold surfaces, for example, an uninsulated reveal, and that you have sufficient ventilation, because a combination of those two things, poor ventilation and high humidity, will always result in surface condensation and mold growth. So if we take a look at an uninsulated wall, and this is where thermal bridge assessment kind of comes into it, an uninsulated wall will lose heat very uniformly. So those little arrows or the vectors are showing that when it's 20 degrees inside and 0 degrees outside, heat just gets lost through every surface, and every surface is cold as a result. Now, what happens in very old, inefficient buildings very often is, you're drying clothes, you're making dinner, you're having baths and things. So there's high humidity in the space, and it condenses on these really cold walls, sometimes running down the wall, presenting as what some people think is rising damp, but it's being misdiagnosed. It's actually surface condensation. Things like salt defects can present as a result of the high humidity on the surfaces. So you get this in old uninsulated buildings. So it's not good enough to leave them as they are if we want to occupy these buildings. And it would be great if we could insulate the buildings on the outside. So what I've shown here is just a 50 mil layer of a thermal plaster applied to the outside of a building. But very often you can't do that. If you could, brilliant. It deals with all of your thermal bridging. It keeps all your internal surface temperatures much, much higher. So it's an ideal type of situation. But again, sometimes you can't do that with older buildings. For example, that building at 18 Norman Quay, done by Dublin Civic Trust. So really what you're left with is internal wall insulation, or IWI. And if you insulate internally, very often what happens is you magnify the heat loss in other areas. For example, that intersecting internal wall where it structurally ties into the external wall. So notice how the vectors have really shortened across the wall. The wall has got colder as a result of less heat getting to it. But as you move towards that middle wall, you see that the vectors are sort of rushing out. So that's the heat is rushing out in those areas. So you can often get mold growth in corners and at ceilings as a result of IWI being poorly planned. Things like this and the thermographic image outside the building would show what it looks like from the outside on a cold night, and the spots on the walls and things are as a result of not being able to detail thermal bridging correctly. So often with IWI, we have to go that one step further. We have to insulate, in clever ways and aesthetically pleasing ways into the hard to reach zones, the areas that might be influencing heat loss overall. And also areas that are, as I said, hard to reach in spaces like this, the difficult to do areas are the ones that really make the difference. But we have to try and join the dots between what's upstairs and what's downstairs. We have to get into them zones and detail for air tightness as well in order to make the most of an internal wall insulation strategy. This happened in this Corn Market building in Dublin, which is the HSE building. And on this site, a colleague of mine noticed at the time that if they insulate above and they insulate below, that there's a natural structural interruption running right through both insulations. So joining the dots in that situation is difficult. Looking at it with thermal bridge assessment, we were able to predict that there will be a low enough surface temperature as a result of insulating above and below that it might actually fall below what's considered a critical threshold, which is often referred to as the FRSI value, or 15 degrees. So in this case, we found a temperature of 9.4 degrees. So it was proposed that they insulate beneath with a tapered board. And in fact, they just used the normal board because there's a drop ceiling going in. But it was found that by doing so, they could elevate the temperatures to over 15 degrees, so creating a degree of safety. And again, just even leaving out things like window shutter boxes can create the perfect conditions for mold, because you'll end up getting heat rushing into that area, trying to get out, creating those cold conditions. So the idea is come back, clean it off, insulate into it, and that will cure that issue. So really, that's the end of my presentation. And just to conclude, it's worth noting that you can't cover everything in one presentation, but each retrofit case is different. So a holistic approach is required, especially if we're going to meet this task head on and do it without affecting our older buildings. Moisture in Ireland is always a risk. Natural materials share many of the performance attributes that old masonry construction requires. So capillarity, high pH, so it's caustic to mold, breathability, good thermal ability, things like that. Using hydrothermal risk assessment EN 15026 can help guide decisions and make better decisions. Detailing out thermal bridging will help prevent low internal surface temperatures and improve thermal comfort overall. So, yep, thanks again for listening, and I hope you got something out of that.
Thanks so much, Joe. I'll say it again, the student has become the master, so kudos. As I said, I'm always thrilled. Not that I do very often have students coming on to speak, but it's absolutely my pleasure. And, it's very close to my heart, the whole conservation and retrofitting of traditional buildings, and very much at the forefront at the moment from what the government are hoping to plan for relocation after this whole COVID mess. So I'm sure, like Liz's talk as well, the whole renovation, the scale of work that's going to be needed is terrifying, to be honest. And getting the skilled personnel to do it. Is that what you...
Huge, yeah, it's a big part of it. But even myself and yourself and professionals in the industry are constantly, like, I'm just after coming out of TU Dublin, upskilling myself, and it's really in reaction to the drive that we're seeing, and to go back to a point that Liz made earlier about even builders merchants requiring a level of upskilling. Well, I'm involved at the moment in trying to do that for some of our products, some of our merchant stockists and things like that, because you're right, they sell 5,000 to 10,000 things in the shop, and you can't be an expert in everything, so they need support also. The industry needs support, and awareness is really a big part of it, I think.
Absolutely. And people might know, I had the pleasure of going to Ecological Systems there in, is it at Boy? Am I right?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Fantastic hands-on workshop. I think I did the air tightness testing there, but unlike when you go to some talks, you come away with a pen and a piece of paper. I came around out of my goodie bags. I think I showed them to you many years ago with the Gutex and things like that. So again, if the COVID passes, to note that your training workshops are second to none up there, and your woofy that you do, is that part of your technical department there, or how does that?
So Niall would be our group technical manager, and Niall is practicing woofy for a long time. He also sits on the board of committees for control of moisture in buildings and things like this, so he's very, very much involved in it. But also as a team, we have a couple of members that practice also, so myself, and there's a guy in the UK as well that dealing with the UK side of things. So we've really, it's to support, because we don't want to be getting phone calls as a company saying, oh, I used your material, something's gone wrong. So really the whole thing about it is being able to support it. But the process of doing that, you kind of learn more and more and more about older buildings. They're very rewarding, and they're certainly worth saving, but the consequences of doing it wrong. And I've seen it all the time as well. So with this huge challenge ahead, I think the onus is on people to try and be prepared and brace themselves for what needs to be done, what needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I think it's a fabulous service. And you mentioned that the traditional buildings are like fingerprints. I like that phrase. And there's one or two. There was a question that came in there from Patrick. Joe, what would you use for solid floors in old buildings?
There is a couple of considerations there, because they're always different. But for example, a standalone building on a hill doesn't really have much of an issue. But a mid-terrace building between two properties, what you do in this property might affect your neighbour. So every one of them, again, and that's another way to point out that they're all so different, but there are methodologies of backfilling floors with things like foam glass aggregates applied above geotextile membranes, finished with limecrete screeds. that are quite assured methods, but also quite technically difficult and more expensive than your conventional means. So everything, you got to look at it all in isolation. There might be suspended floor in it, so you might be able to upgrade that element and maintain your flow of air beneath, you know. So there's quite a few strategies available.
And that's it. I think there's a lot of people self-building. So again, it's great to know that you provide those services as well. Passive House Plus magazine, again, I find it's a great resource, and I know you feature quite a lot in that as well, and it's available in all good bookshops or magazines when you can get into them. So Patrick, again, maybe there's something there. As Alan was saying, I live in an old cottage. I did come talking to you. Damp is my enemy, water is my enemy, but we have to work with it rather than against it. So again, thank you very much, Joe. It's certainly, as I said, I love learning all, and we're constantly learning. The products are changing, the specifications are changing, and we just need to get it out there that how you treat an old traditional building is not the same as a modern construction, but there's help out there. That's
for sure. Thanks, Finola.
Not at all, Joe. So Alice, apologies for delaying you there. If you're there, Alice. And again, any other questions, please feel free. We can get to them at the end. Where is she? She's sharing her screen. Alice, are you okay?
Yeah, hi, sorry, I was just getting set up here to run through my presentation here today on quality. So I suppose just to give a small bit of background to me, I currently work with BAM contractors, and I suppose quality is my passion. I'm very, everything that I do on site has to do with quality and continuous improvement and continuing education in that area. So today, I suppose before I start my presentation on the planning aspect of quality management in construction projects, I think it's important that we outline why quality is one of the most important elements of what we do in construction today. Because we're not just simply constructing a building, we're playing a vital role in the full life cycle management of that asset. We produce all the key information of how we operate and maintain this asset. The quality of information we provide on the building at completion will play a vital part in how we're going to operate and maintain that building. The buildings we are constructing are designed with future proofing in mind and adding value for the client. Buildings are now required to add value to the community they live in, need to be sustainable and efficient and run and manage, and efficient to run and manage. But most importantly, they need to be compliant and safe for those that live in it and service it. And when I say compliant, I mean that they're built to client and contract requirements. They're built to the intended design and specifications with limited design residual risk, and they're compliant with all our building regulations. That the installers that are constructing the building, that they're competent and have a proven track record when it comes to compliance and the BCAR requirements, and they're able to demonstrate this and also record this and certify their work. Our designers have a statutory obligation to inspect the works as they progress to ensure that our installers are compliantly constructing and testing as we build. In modern construction projects, the idea of working in silos is now an extinct concept because of digital technology and innovation. With construction management software, we now have the ability and the digital tools to collaborate effectively, standardize all our processes and workflows, and record all the critical evidence of compliance and due diligence that we complete on site when it comes to quality. Digital construction management software has advanced how we manage quality, and when it comes to accessing information, documentation, tracking and tracing our reviewable design data, defects management and snaggings, also how we raise queries in the field, and most importantly, how we record compliance. Digital and quality are interlinked, and I suppose the eureka moment for quality through digital and technology was the ability to link a photo to a location and enable a photographic as-built to be captured as we build. Linking all, and also linking any non-conformances when we go to look at defects, so that we can efficiently and clearly close these out. So quite often we discuss what we do in the field and how technology and digital software support us in doing that. But today I'm going to discuss how we plan to meet our quality requirements before we get into the field, so that when we do get in there, we can do it right first time. So I'm just going to show you the overview of quality management throughout the phases. So in order for us to plan these efficiently and correctly, we need to take part, at tender stage, apologies, sorry, it's after going ahead on me. So in order to plan what we're going to do for quality, when we get throughout all of these stages in construction, we need to have an oversight of all those phases and what we need to provide, produce, control, manage and assure throughout that project. So it doesn't just start when we get into the field just here. It starts by, first of all, having an understanding of how all these elements are linked together, but it also starts at tender stage. So at tender stage, we're looking at what the client wants, the client's project requirements. We're looking at the design specification and performance and the standards and the design intent. We're looking into our building regulations, and we're deciding how we would complete that project, who would perform it, and what we would be building, and when we deliver it by. And we're also working out what digital capabilities we have to actually provide what the client wants. Not all construction projects, or not all clients, especially in the design and build environment, may have complicated reviewable design data and management processes. So what do I mean by that? I mean, so when we're putting all our design submittals through for review and approval, there may be a two-step process involved in that. What we're also trying to do in this stage before we get on site is understand the roles and responsibilities that were required throughout the construction. We're looking for compliant materials. We're looking for contractors that will be able to complete good workmanship, and they're going to install compliantly, and also understand the method that they're going to install to. We're also going to be auditing our off-site manufacturing, any of our suppliers that we have. We're going to be assessing them and constantly working with them to ensure that what they're going to produce for us is going to be right when we get in. And then the following: benchmarking samples, inspection and test plan, defect management, evidence of compliance, and tracking and reporting. These are all activities we will complete in the field during construction, but we need to look at those before we get in the field, understand how we're going to do them and how we're effectively going to meet those challenges in the field, record them, manage them, and effectively close them out with the help of digital. And then when we get all of this planned out through these two phases, we'll be ready to start construction with a quality view in mind. And throughout these different phases, everything we're doing in these two phases here are going to determine what we're going to be able to provide here in our O&M after we've handed over the project. Everything we're going to provide, the level of quality of information that we're going to provide, so that the people who are operating that building will be able to operate it efficiently, correctly and safely. And it's going to be safe for anybody who is in those buildings. So just to go on from that, what I want to talk about is the planning side of that. So how do we balance the triple constraint in favor of quality? So we talk about this a lot in construction, and when we talk about the triple constraint, we're talking, when we talk about quality, the quality aspect of the triple constraint, we're talking about, well, how is it installed? Is it installed correctly? Has it been compliantly installed? Is it fit for purpose? Is it safe, compliant, and installed to the BCAR standards? When we're talking about cost, we're talking about the cost of resources, and we're also talking about the cost of rework. And in relevance to time, we're talking about the time that we have to complete these tasks and that we've signed up to in our contract, and the time we have to deliver them to. So bearing in mind those three elements and looking at quality, how do we look at those and say, well, for quality, I need to deliver everything to specification and it needs to be BCAR compliant. So that's, as managing quality, that's what I care about right here. But it also has to be delivered on time and within budget. So with all the different stages that go on in the project, which I previously showed you, like, how do we make sure that we can do that, deliver all of these things here without them affecting the quality? Well, we do this through process innovation, we do it through continuous improvement and collaboration, and most importantly, quality planning. So how I work this out on my projects is I add quality and compliance gates to our critical path, and I apply process durations to these. And I do this by analysing each step that I need to take in my quality on site. So by estimating the duration and understanding the constraints for each activity and adding that duration to the key quality and compliance activities to my critical path. So by identifying and planning compliance in pre-construction, what I'm doing is I'm determining the quality requirements. So as discussed already, I'm taking them from my employer's requirements. I'm saying the processes, procedures, and people that will be involved in the project. I'm preparing my preliminary inspection and test plan. I'm going to describe how I'm going to meet the specification requirements, and I'm also going to see how I'm going to report within those requirements. When it comes to the design submittals and review design data, I'm talking about my drawings, my subcontractors, my materials, my method, and also my O&M materials. So all that information I need to get approved by the reviewers. I need to do all that before we get into the field. So by understanding how long this process takes to get our formalized design and to get the right subcontractors who will be able to carry out the works in the field, I need to understand, and who has to approve it. Maybe my design team have to approve it, and then maybe afterwards it has to go on to the client to have further level of approval. So if I can't go to the field, which we know we can't, without our completed design and without approved materials and approved contractors, well, then all this is going to take some time, and we have to remember we mightn't actually get approval first time off. As much as we try to get approval right in the first time, sometimes there are variances. But to ensure that I get approval on those, I hold technical review workshops with my designers and my subcontractors. So before I submit this information, I'm having those technical reviews. I'm looking at all the key documents that need to go in as part of the design submittal, whether it's the drawings, shop drawings from external design that needs to be approved, our data sheets. This was a huge moment in 2021 post-Brexit, where everybody went in construction was talking about submittals and talking about CE marking and European technical assessments and harmonized standards. Everybody was wondering, has the materials that have been specified for my project, are they compliant in line with construction materials? So after we get our approved submittals, materials and submittals from this, we're going on here to think about our design and method. So in relation to the design and method, we're going to hold BCAR workshops with our subcontractors and our suppliers. We're going to get them, we're going to see, have they used these materials before? Even though subcontractors in the field work on the same work packages all the time, so often they'll be working with a new material or a new supplier. The worst thing that can be said in terms of quality in the field is this is the way we've always done this. Each material that comes on site has a unique set of instructions of how it needs to be installed, in what conditions it needs to be installed. Does it need to be covered? We live in Ireland, can it be installed when it's in December, when it mightn't get over 4 degrees during the day? You know, is it a product that's from outside of Ireland where they assume it's going to be 15 degrees every day? So these are all the things we need to talk about and think about when it comes to materials. Now, I know they're being approved and reviewed by our design team here, but step 3 here when we're working with our approved technical submittals, it's really only when we get into getting ready to install them on site that we're really getting that second level of assurance before we go into the field. When we're reviewing these with the subcontractors, it's at that point that we get to audit that kind of process of how we're going to do it, what the materials need, and the method that we want to do that in. So it's a second level of assurance, and that also takes time to get ready. This also has to be managed digitally so that we're recording what we're doing, and we also have a benchmark schedule for that. So the benchmark schedule, the reason that's very important is because when we're ready to go for a benchmark on site, it does take time. We don't just decide it's a lovely day today and sure, look, I did great work there this morning and I'm kind of really proud of it. Let's benchmark that. That's not the way it goes. So when our subcontractors start with us on site, it's the first instance of that type of work that we're asking them to benchmark. So it's not just a piece of work that they'd be really proud of. It's a chance for the design team and the contractors for the contractors to understand and interpret the design intent, but also for the design team to approve that. But it's also about workmanship and the method of how we're going to do this. So in relation to benchmarking on site and aesthetic samples, so once we have approved materials, we have design and we've outlined the method that we're going to do that. We've had our BCAR workshop with the subcontractor. They know what their roles and responsibilities are. They're compliant and we're ready to go on to do our benchmark in the field. We're looking in the benchmark for workmanship. We're looking that they're installed as per our technical guidance documents. We're looking at the process of how we're going to complete this work and install it compliantly. And we're asking our design team to come in and verify that they're happy that yes, indeed, it is as per design drawings. The materials are the materials that we approved back here in our technical submission stage. And that also the method of installation is correct. Now, what's so important about the benchmark is no two projects are the same. So there might be site-specific conditions. We might have, specifics on the project that mean that there needs to be a variance of how we're going to install these. And that too needs input, whether it's from our structural engineers or architects. There might be an element. It might be a coordinated benchmark. It may have a fire or an access issue, as long with being part of the specification from the architect. So all these, the preparation that we do pre-construction that gets us ready to ensure that we've competent people, that we have approved design, that we have materials, spending time on this pre-construction stage inevitably gives us all the tools we need, that when we do get to the benchmark stage and we are ready to construct, that we're getting it right first time when we attempt to do that. And so after the benchmark is completed, approved by the design team, we go on, we're saying that each instance of work is going to be installed as per benchmark. So if any works aren't installed as per benchmark, any future works on site, well then when we go to inspect and we say, well, that hasn't been installed, that's not the approved method, it's the incorrect materials, or there's an issue with how you've installed that on site, we manage that in the defect and management and snagging management step. These steps are interlinked both with our inspection plan and our defect management. In our inspection plan, we're outlining who needs to inspect the work. Now, we do a preliminary inspection plan at the beginning of, in step one, when we're doing our quality plan, but it's a live document that continues throughout the project with us, and as the requirements and work packages are further defined. So with the inspection and test plan, it's mainly defined by the assigned certifier. However, it's the assigned certifier, all our designers, and also the main contractor who will have input in saying who will inspect the works, how the frequency of when they'll come to inspect the works, and what we're looking for there is, again, photographic evidence of compliance, of installation. We're looking for confirmation of materials and workmanship, and that it has been installed in line with the building regulations, standards and design intent. So when we're managing the inspection plan for quality, we're reporting out to our clients, we're reporting out, to our design team on the amount of inspections that we've completed. Our design team are our designers, they're the ones that have the statutory obligation to inspect on the project. So by law, they must go in and inspect the works and confirm that what they've seen we'll say whether it be weekly or fortnightly, they must confirm that they're happy with the works. And if they're not happy with the works, this is where our non-conformance reporting and our defect management really comes into play. So these are interlinked, and we can't move on to complete any works until we get both of these two steps done very, very well. So by identifying and planning and verifying compliance, performing due diligence and demonstrating and recording evidence of compliance, that is how we are ensuring quality throughout these steps, so that we can go on to the further steps of commissioning and handover. And by allocating time to these steps, what we're doing, when I talk about allocating time, it's ensuring that from a quality perspective, I have enough time to ensure that I can bring the subcontractors along in terms of workshops, that I have the correct materials in the field, that we have a design that there will be no, we have a confirmed design that there will be no changes, so that we're not going back to do any rework in the field, because rework is the main cause for costs to rise on projects, but it's also a huge compliance issue. So I suppose that's my slides for today. I suppose I want to finish up by saying leadership is not an expertise, but a continued education. I'm currently working with AIT in the course design of the quality engineering, BCAR and quality management courses. These will be accredited courses and provide the learners with the right skills to excel in the field and the qualification to get there. So they'll be learning and training at all levels, level 9, 8, 7, 6, and professional CPD with credits towards future studies. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alice. Again, I always love your presentations. To put us to shame, I think there's probably, again, a few open mouths there when quality wouldn't be something or a term that's often used in construction. And even though you're working with BAM, I think you did say it at the start, it's applicable to any construction project. It has to be applicable because it's the law. And
yeah, that's it.
It's the law. People think technical guidance, document, or regulation. It's the law. And the process you went through there could be applied to small and medium contractors. It has to be applied, I suppose, is also the point of the talk today.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And look, I've just scratched the surface there today. If I didn't keep motoring through, I could spend an hour chatting about it and each slide, but I didn't want to overload you with information. It was really just to give you the idea of how we plan and why we plan, so that we can try and get it right.
There was a question from Patrick, and he was wondering, did you deliberately leave out planning permission in the pre-construction, like making sure that the designs you get comply with planning?
So the last time I came to speak at CitA event, I did actually the full cycle of life cycle of BCAR from construction, from start to complete. So today I'm talking about planning, and it's talking about getting it right for the main contractor. Planning would be a major part of the BCAR process, and we do upload that. Without all of that stuff, we don't get our commencement notice to start works. So I suppose I was thinking I didn't include that in the talk today, as I covered it in the last talk the last time. And as I said, there's a lot of information to go through here, so I just wanted to talk about planning management today.
And videos, Patrick, or anybody, that's from the November regional event, again under the AIT aspect. We had Alice, as you said, speaking there, and the slides for that are also available on the CitA website. And again, Alice is a consultant with us here on the DASB programs. And likewise with Joe, and this is the point I was making earlier about trying to get industry experts to come in, tell us what you need, tell us what you can do for us. And we're at that point now where we're in course development, and certainly Alice is bringing a unique skill set that's required by all, that's required throughout, and we hope to see more of her in the future. I'm conscious of the time, we're 1 minute past 2. I just want to say a huge thank you to our speakers. Everybody is so busy at the moment, so giving us your time. I know these events are recorded. They are up on the CitA website, which is a huge resource that was mentioned before. So please pass on the word to colleagues, friends, not friends down the pub, who may be interested either in old traditional building upgrades, in the free courses that Liz has mentioned. Keep an eye out on DASB, and remember your quality processes as well. So I'll hopefully see you all at the next CitA event. So again, a huge thanks to Suzanne and the crew that have been in the background patiently there, and the best of luck to the rest of the speakers for tomorrow and Friday. I'll be certainly tuning in to those as well. So thank you all very much. Suzanne, I think Suzanne is gone. Is there anyone from the CitA team there? Thank you, Enda.
Yeah, Suzanne has gone. Listen, thank you so much, Finola. Thank you, Alice, Joe, and Liz, for your fantastic presentations. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. And thank you to everyone who's joined us today.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.